Have you ever tried rendering a glass product only to struggle with lighting that just doesn't look right? In this video, I'll show you a simple professional lighting setup for glass products in Blender, using a glass espresso cup as our example. Welcome to part 6 of the Blender product rendering series, where each video helps you level up your 3D rendering skills. Open up Blender and let's get started. First off, make sure that you are using Blender 5.0 or later, as we will need some of the features that come with that version. I will be showing how to model the espresso glass, but will not go into too much detail, so I will just go over some of the basic modeling of the glass. So I just deleted everything in the scene. Then I am loading in a reference image of espresso glass and just lining it up in the viewport so that we can draw the rough shape of it. Then I add in a Bezier curve. I'm just extruding points, moving them along to make the shape of the glass. If you've ever worked with vector graphics in Illustrator or Inkscape or similar software, this is basically exactly that, just outlining the contour of the image and changing the splines so that they match the curvature. So one thing, just make sure that both of the points of the inside of the glass and the bottom of the glass line up at the origin of the scene so that when we do the next step, it works. So the next step is adding a screw modifier to this curve. What this does is it rotates the whole curve 360 degrees, and one thing you want to change is the steps. So just change that to a higher number. I used 120. Next, I scaled down the object to more of a accurate scale to what a espresso glass would be. So I was just using the height value, and it's 63.5 millimeters. After that, apply the scale and then add a solidify modifier. And I changed the thickness to zero point 0.3 millimeters. And this will be important so that the glass material looks correct. So once the modeling is done, go ahead and convert the curve to a mesh so that we actually have vertices that we can use later. Next, let's set up the camera. So first thing, add in a camera, then clear the rotation and location, then rotate it along the x-axis 90 degrees and move it back a little bit along the y-axis. Then change the focal length to 200 millimeters and change the camera resolution to a square resolution. Then just go into the camera view and then move it up until the glass is sort of centered in the scene. Then go into render mode, change the render engine to cycles, use the GPU if you have that. I like to set the sampling down to lower numbers, especially for the viewport and then also for the final render. Go into the film setting and check transparent so that the background is transparent. All right, let's move on to lighting. Open up a side panel and change this to the shader editor, and then go into the world nodes and change the background strength to 0 so that we have no lighting in the scene at all. Then go to your cup object and add a material. You can name this glass. Then delete the default material and add in a glass node. Then connect that to the material output and change the IOR to 1.35. So you'll still not see anything since we do not have any lighting in the scene yet. Then in scenes like this, I like to open up another panel up here so that I can view the rendered image all the time up there. And I can move around in the scene in this main panel. So go ahead and add in an area light, then rotate this along the y-axis 90 degrees so that it's pointing at the glass from the right to the left. Then drag the light back a little bit, change the shape from square to rectangle. And for this light, I'm going to set the Y to 200 millimeters, just so it's like a narrow light. The next thing to add is a diffusion plane. What this will do is diffuse the area light so that it does not create such harsh lighting edges on the glass. So go ahead, add in a plane, rotate it along the y-axis 90 degrees, move it back from the glass towards the light, and then add a new material to this plane. Change the transmission value to 0.46 and the roughness to 0.4. So this plane is just in between the light and the glass, and it will diffuse the light. Next, add in another plane. This plane will reflect the light back onto the glass from behind, and it's really the main lighting that gives us that really crisp look. So scale this plane down until it's a bit larger than the glass, rotate it along the x-axis 90 degrees, move it back behind the glass, then add a new material to this plane, change the metallic to 1 and the roughness to 0. Then rotate this plane and move it so that the area light is reflected off of this plane back to the glass. And then you can adjust this plane a little bit just so it's kind of more centered. I'm going to move the main area light a little bit back behind the glass and adjust the reflection plane as needed. All right, next let's add the logo to this glass. With the glass selected, go into edit mode, select 2 loops around the top and the bottom of the glass. It really doesn't matter too much where they are since we're not texturing the whole glass, it's just part of it. Then go to the back view behind the glass and you'll need to hide the reflection plane. Then select a line directly down the back of the glass between the 2 loops. Then right click and select Mark Scene. Change the upper left hand corner to the UV editor. Then drag in the logo image. I'll make sure to include a link to this image down in the description. Then add a texture coordinate and mapping node to this image and preview the alpha of the image. Then with the glass selected, go into edit mode, press U and then unwrap minimum stretch. So you'll see what it did up in the upper left hand corner. Move all of the unwrapped parts out of where the logo is and select the one that's more rectangular by hitting L, then rotate it 90 degrees and scale up. Then rotate it so that the logo is placed on the glass correctly. Then back in the texture nodes, make sure to set the drop down that says repeat to clip so that it only shows the logo once. All you have to do after that is change the scale of the UV map up in the top left and just scale it down and place it somewhere on the glass that looks good. Once you like how it looks, go back out of edit mode. Then in the material nodes, add a displacement node, connect the alpha to the height, and then the output of the displacement to the displacement on the material output. Then go back to previewing the main glass. So for the displacement to work, go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier to the glass and check adaptive subdivision. Then go down to the material properties. Under settings, change the displacement to displacement and bump. After that, you'll see the glass goes kind of crazy, but that's just because the displacement scale is way too big. So change it to a value of negative 0.0001, and this will just give it a little bit of bump on the glass. So if you zoom in, you can see it, but it's really too faint. So to fix that, we will adjust the roughness of the glass in the logo area so that it is visible. Take the alpha output of the image and plug that into a color ramp, and then plug that color ramp output into the roughness of the glass. You'll immediately see that the logo becomes darker, and that's because we're making the glass in the logo area rougher. So in the color ramp, go into the white value and drag it down a bit so that it's just a little less rough. So the image is basically done now, but there are a few things to adjust before rendering the final image. I noticed that the focal length looked a little bit weird, so I changed it to 180 millimeters. Another thing we need to still work on is the reflection of the glass. So normally you would add a plane and then make it really smooth so that there's a reflection of the glass on that plane. But that doesn't really look good, especially when you want to have a transparent background. Instead, we will be using a photography trick and just be mirroring the glass underneath the existing glass. So duplicate the glass, then set the transform type to the 3D cursor and rotate the glass 180 degrees along the y-axis. And this will really easily give us that mirrored effect. And that's it. All you have to do is render out the final image. The thing with rendering glass this way is that it's really versatile. If you want to use it on a white background, it looks great. If you want to use it on a black background, it looks great. And if you want to put it on some packaging with like a color as a background, that also works. And obviously this is a very simple example, but you can do this with whatever other glass you have to render, and it looks really clean and professional. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something from it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, be sure to let me know in the comments.